Welcome to our first module. In this module, we're going to review what psychology is, what instructional psychology is, and then a brief overview of the concepts we're going to cover in this course. Further on in the module, you're going to look at neuroscience and its impacts on the fields of education. But first, we need to understand what psychology is. So my bachelor's and my master's degree were both in psychology. The American Psychological Association is a fantastic resource. There are lots of things you can find on their website. And so they define psychology as the study of mind and behavior. They say that it embraces all aspects of the human experience. So that's why we look at human development, we look at the process of the brain developing, as well as socially and individually. They also say that it impacts many other areas of our world. So one of those areas is education. So instructional psychology can also be referred to as educational psychology. Often we refer to those who actually process psychology in the education environment. They are called educational psychologists. So those are psychologists who might be meeting with students for disability purposes, or for those that are gifted and need some assessment, or just are having behavior issues in the classroom. But instructional psychology is a bit more broad, and so it encompasses the study of all processes and outcomes of human learning. And so that does apply, as I mentioned in our first introduction to the course, it applies to the K-12 setting, it applies to early childhood education, it applies to higher education. It also does apply to the workplace and workplace training and other places where we might be receiving instruction. And so we can apply psychology to understand these other areas in which instruction occurs. This was taken from the International Encyclopedia of Social and Behavioral Sciences, and this is also a link that will be available in the slides. There are going to be several concepts we cover over the coming weeks. We're going to begin with neuroscience in this module. We're going to look at classical and operant conditioning in the next module, along with behavior modification and reinforcement. We'll also briefly touch on social cognitive theory, and I wish we had more time to discuss social cognitive theory in particular, but I at least want you to have a general understanding of what that concept is. We will then move on to motivation, attributions, and goals. Our next module is going to cover cognition, so we're going to review some major cognitive theories, and then we'll dive into memory. And in our final two modules, we'll be covering metacognition, understanding how we learn, why we learn, the self-regulation process, and finally we will discuss human development and both Piaget and Vygotsky's theories of human development. We're going to meet some people. So this is just a few of the psychologists who have contributed to the field of psychology, whose work can be applied to the education field as well. So you'll learn about Ivan Pavlov and his dogs when we talk about conditioning. You'll learn about Albert Bandura, who is still living, and he is a professor emeritus at Stanford, and Bandura's modeling and the Bobo doll experiment. You will learn about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs when we talk about motivation. And then finally, when we talk about human development, we'll talk about Piaget and Vygotsky. So there are some additional resources I'd like to make you aware of before we begin the course. I think the Psych Files is a really cool collection of podcasts. There are all different kinds of topics related to psychology, but there's a lot of intersection between psychology and education, psychology and marketing, psychology and sports, all different kinds of things. The textbook, again, I listed here as a resource, and the APA website, in case you'd like to browse that further. So welcome to Instructional Psychology again, and we will move into neuroscience now.